Peace and love, BIO family. Waiting for a few people to get in. I will wait for 2 to 3 minutes to allow people to get into the chat. So I'm just going to be sitting here for 2 to 3 minutes. All right, fam, we are approaching the 2 minute mark. So I'm about to get into today's topic. And today's topic is developing the right mindset. What does it entail? Now, I know a lot of people talk about nationhood and Black self determination, but the reality of it is you can't have Black self determination if you do not know what it entails, what it consists of, what are the components, and how to organize everything. So this whole live stream is going to break down everything so that people understand the basics of what nationhood encompasses, what nationhood means, what does it mean to be developed, what does it mean to be organized. This is what this live stream is going to be about, because I hear a lot of people on YouTube, I see it on Instagram, I see it on Facebook. They'll talk a good game, but when it comes time to organize, when it comes time for the rubber to meet the road, they can't do it. So that's what this video is going to be about. So the very simple thing that we have to ask first is, what is a nation? And a nation is simple. There are three things that you have to have in order to be considered a nation. One, you have to have a defined territory. So this can be, you know, a mountain or a valley. It could be near the ocean. It could be in the savannas of Africa, or tropical rainforest. It can be anything. You just need to have land that you own and you control. The second thing that you need in order to be classified as a nation is you need a permanent population. So if you have land and you have a permanent population, you can therefore be classified as a nation. The third thing, though, which is kind of the most difficult thing in order for nationhood to succeed, is you need to be recognized. It's one thing to have a population in land, but if you have nobody to recognize you, then there's going to be no nation. Can y'all hear me in the chat? Can y'all hear me? Is my mic on? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Okay, I just want to make sure that y'all can hear me. But that's what you have to have, those three basic characteristics, in order to be classified as a nation. Now, we've been trying to advocate for nationhood forever. We've been advocating it. HOLA's been advocating for it since, 2000, the early 2000s. I've been advocating it now since when I was in high school. And so that's what nationhood is about. But then you have to organize everything. And I know that for a lot of us, we don't understand what organization means. And so this goes into the second question. What does it mean to be organized? Organization means that you have everything that functions and everything understands its role. So an example would be when you are in a company, You know who the CEOs are, who the managers are, who are the employees, who are your human resource management, who are, your counselors. You have all of that in there. And that's what organization is about. It's giving it structure. It's giving it that blueprint to succeed. You can't have a nation if you're not organized. We have a lot of people talking about self determination. They talk about this, but what does that mean? Do you have, leaders of the community? Do you have followers of the community? And not just followers like they listen to the leaders, but do you have a secretary? Do you have a treasurer? Do you have a public relations man? Do you have a human resource manager? Do you have of course, president, vice president, or CEO, whatever the leadership at the top you want to call it? Do you have all this stuff? Do you have representatives? This is everything that has to be included in order for you to be organized. And right now, what I don't see that in the community. I see a lot of talking, but no substance. I see a lot of, we should do this, we should empower the community, sort of ego stroking, but I don't see no effort to actually construct things. I don't see an effort to actually coalesce things. One of the biggest things that I don't have is I don't have an ego. I'm not trying to be the one that's on everybody's TV trying to get everybody's attention. That's not what being organized is about. It's not the person who has the loudest microphone. The person who's the most organized is not the most visible, the most talkative, the most flashy. The person who is the most organized is the person who's the most capable, most willing to do the job, and most willing to be able to sacrifice. That is something that what it means to be the most organized. You can't have an organization if nobody's willing to sacrifice and accept their roles. And for me, if I have to, take a step back and somebody else wants to lead, I'm more than comfortable to do that because I know my value. I know my self-worth. Nobody should be giving you a cookie or brownie points because you want to do something that you're supposed to do. It's basic, organization skills 101. And organizations that do this succeed, and organizations that, have an ego, they fail. I've kept bringing this book up, but it was a student leadership handbook that I received. And this book I received when I was vice president of the American Society of Civil Engineers my sophomore year before I went to go study abroad in South Africa. And one of the things that they were talking about was students who were most involved were more likely to participate. And that's what it has to be. I don't want to just hear you talk. Allow people to get involved. Allow people to volunteer. Have organization goals and not just your ego. And that will go a long way into, securing everything. That will go a long way. To answer Baruti's point, Jambu there is, Jambu Baruti, Wewe Hujambu, can a nation be cultural, geophysical, and or both? The U.S. organization defined that a nation can be cultural, i.e. not necessarily having as in the African American case. For me personally, I believe a nation has to be geophysical because you have really no cultural nation, aka cultural, aka cultural nationalism, but you don't have anything. So that has to be considered as well. So if anything, that's what has to be considered. Now, as we go back to being a nation, hold on, give me a minute. All right, so back to what I was saying. Yeah, so when it comes to nationhood and organization, those are going to be the two major organizations. Going to be the major pillar because you got a lot of people that are talking about, oh, we a nation and we would thrive, and yes, we would be able to thrive.
But my simple question is to everybody in the chat and to everybody who's going to be looking at this in the future. Do you know how to run a government? Do you know what public policy is? Do you know how to make a public policy proposal? Are you engaged in political science, social sciences, humanities? It's one thing to talk, but you have to have the skills. And if you don't have the skills, the nation is not going to survive. And that goes into my third question. What does it mean to have a functioning government? To have a functioning government means the government does its role. The government knows what needs to be done. There are checks and balances to make sure that the system does what it needs to do. A functioning government meets the people's needs. Not only meets the people's needs, but has a vision, an agenda, and is able to meet future ambitions. A functioning government is one that is low in corruption, usually has democratic governance, has strong institutions, strong social institutions, is very stable. There's no coups going on. There's no concerns about voter fraud. Everything is going the way things should. It allows people to go with their day-to-day lives. It allows for the economy to grow and allow for people to invest because they know things are going to be stable. They have transitions of power if necessary. This is what having a functioning government is. A functioning government is not a bunch of folks who are together and proclaim themselves to be a government and don't know what they're doing. They have no diplomatic recognition. They don't have embassies. They don't have, cultural organizations. They don't have think tanks. That's not a nation. To me, that's just you just talking. When I think of a functioning government, I mean you are stable in your home country. You're able to exhibit soft power globally and within your own region. You have those resources that are necessary. And in America right now, we see that we don't have a functioning government. We saw it in Texas. We saw it with the power grid being going out, and people out in the cold, people dying of carbon monoxide. Ted Cruz taking himself to Cancun, going on a vacation and blaming his children for it. People having blackouts, downtown Houston lit up. Like that's an example of not having a functioning government. The coronavirus pandemic, we've seen an example of not having a functioning government. That's what that means. You were not able to meet your constituents' needs. And most important, when it came time for your constituents to simply ask for you to do your job, they neglected. That's the problem. And we need people to be aware of that, most important. When it means to nationhood, having a functioning government, being organized, that's what that means. So this is going to head into the fourth question, which the fourth question is what does it mean to be a developed nation? And being a developed nation is simple. Being a developed nation means that you meet all the characteristics. And these characteristics are you are industrialized. You have political stability. You have a high per capita income. You have a high human development index, which is the HDI. You have political stability. You have freedom. You have high quality of living. You have education, almost guaranteed education for all. You have a high GDP. You're shifting. You're not just an industrial, an agrarian, but you've shifted to a knowledge economy, which means you are developing, valuable knowledge such as procedures, design, software, and formulation, and your service economy as well. The government meets basic needs such as universal health care. They have, transportation. They have public facilities. This is what it means to be a developed nation. And we have not done that. In a lot of African countries, we have not provided people with the necessary resources. We have not provided people with the necessary, education, healthcare, and people are struggling as a result. You know, we're not giving those necessary investments. We're not putting it into our transportation, our infrastructure, so that our citizens can really thrive and really grow. Instead, we have a lot of places where there's not enough paved roads. People don't have access to healthcare facilities. Um, they have to go hours just to get to the nearest. There's a shortage of doctors. Like there's one doctor for every 15,000 people. One doctor for every 30,000 people, and you're really only supposed to have one doctor per 1,000. And the fact that we don't have that is a huge, huge problem. Huge problem. In order for us to reach that developed nation status, we have to start focusing on the priorities of everyday people. So it can't just be, oh, we have high GDP growth. Equatorial Guinea has the highest GDP per capita in Africa, and it's one of the lowest human development indexes because all the wealth is in the hands of the president. And the fact that it's all within the hands of the president means that there's not enough resources. People still don't have clean water. They don't have access to clean healthcare. They don't have access to healthcare. They don't have clean water. They don't have sanitation. They don't have none of that. They don't have basic services that you need for a country to thrive in the 21st century. They don't have a knowledge sector. They don't have a service sector. They rely almost entirely on oil and gas, which is a non-renewable resource, which that is going to run out in the future. So in order for us to be developed, we have to understand what it means and we have to strive for it. We need to be able to manufacture our own resources. We have Kentanka, a car company in Ghana. You have Innocent in Nigeria. But this needs to be all throughout Africa. Manufacturing our own cars, creating our own social media platforms, having our own factories, having our own manufactured food, having our own crops, our own laptops, being able to compete in the global market. That's what we need to have. And we need to make this a priority. And any African leaders who are not willing to do that should be sidestepped. We should not be giving these false promises, these vague generalities that have no substance. We need more of these resources. We need more of these politicians who are dedicated to them. Now, there are some that do it, but not a lot of them are doing it, and it's deeply problematic. And that goes into the final question, which is, what does policy encompass? Policy encompass means that you have access to not only the proper policy agenda, but you know who it's going to affect, you know how long it's going to take, you have the resources allocated, you know how much it's going to cost, and you're ready to go. A lot of what we have in Africa is bad policy making. People who do not know what public policy entails, what is encompassed, don't have the necessary skills. And, as somebody who had to do a public policy report for a assignment when I was studying abroad, it takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of investment because this is what people are going to be seeing when their elected officials go to the parliament. They're going to be looking for people who they know how to do a, public policy agenda. People who have a vision, but they know how to outline. So people know, okay, this is who's going to benefit. This is what is directed towards. Not just talking rhetoric and being a demagogue. I need people to have that mindset. And once we get to good policy making, that's when, things are going to become substantially better. So Baruti came, you said, since you as blacks more or less than toward an ADOS mindset, a no nation but a quest for, what is your strategy for creating a paradigm shift? It's really, Baruti, you got to be on the continent and you have to really bring results. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We can't, there are people already pushing this. It's not just us. There are people who are advocating for it. It's not in an organized fashion. I've been seeing a lot of African Americans, of course, Ghana, but they're moving to Southern Africa, like South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia. You have African Americans, Sierra Leone, 22 of them. The paradigm shift can happen, but you need to have people who they are versatile in this manner. They know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to nationhood. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to public policy and the skills and necessary steps it takes to do a public policy report, to have, the cost analysis curve diagram built, to have, cash inflow charts so that people know this is how much is going to be received in annual income revenue. You have to have people who know this. It's great that we have more and more people pushing for it. And, people who are building stuff on the continent. But you can't fully create that paradigm shift if you don't have people who they know where they are talking. They don't have a vision. They can't properly debunk these talking points. I was just recently watching, something by Tariq Nasheed, and they was doing Afrocentricity versus foundational Black Americans. And the woman on the panel, in my opinion, she didn't do a good job. And there was one comment that said that they needed to bring a real Pan-Africanist on. And that's the true statement. You need a real Pan-Africanist. Somebody who, I know the history of the Back to Africa movement. I know the history of nationhood. And if you ask me, I know what I'm talking about. And I know what you're talking about. And I can easily debunk your arguments. That, Barusi, is how you create the paradigm shift. You need to challenge these people head on. You need to challenge their talking points. And we don't do that. We allow them sort of to get a little pass, and that's not good. That's not good at all. So I know I've completed all 5 questions, really, really early. It's at the 22-minute mark. If there's any questions that you guys would like to ask, let me know in the chat. But that's really what it comes down to, what it means to get into the right mindset. Just understanding what stuff means, what it means to be organized, and how do you leverage that. That's really what it comes down to. I want to see us. That's why we created this organization, the BIL. You need organization. You need to have, somewhere where people know where to go, where people know, that's what represents us, and they don't have to think about it. Not just a person. Because oftentimes that's what it usually is. It's usually a person. It's never a group of people. You notice how it's usually, it's just a person like this one person and that one person. It's never a group of people. It's never a, hey, I'm the founder of this movement, but look at my secretary. Look at my treasurer. Look at my spokesperson. Look at my salesperson. Look at my social media person. None of that is there. All you have is people just talking, no organization skills. And I'm a very organized, structural person. I prefer things to be organized. I prefer things to be structured so that I know what to expect. I know what needs to happen, and we can move and go on from there. I don't like things just wishy-washy and people just talking and everything is discombobulated. Everything is acephalous. Everything is amorphous. I don't like those kind of things. So there needs to be organization on this. Any other questions? Like I said, because I've already completed the 5 questions. That's really what it comes down to. I'm not gonna really hammer you guys on this stuff because some of it is basic. Of course, some stuff like a developed nation. What are the characteristics of industrialization? That stuff can be a little hard, and it takes a lot of really substantial research on it. But that's really what it comes down to. It's understanding, the fundamentals of everything. Once you understand the fundamentals of everything, then you can build. But if you don't understand the basic fundamentals, you really can't expect to thrive. You really can't expect to get anything done. And when I look at countries like Sweden, Norway, not only them, but Singapore, Qatar, they all have resources. Yeah, Baruti, you are absolutely right. The acceptance of the term FBA is a problem because it doesn't make sense. And that's what I mean. You don't have somebody like me who can go on there and challenge Tariq and completely debunk his argument. Because he was talking about, oh, it neglects the fact that black people were mixed in with the Aborigines. And the simple question that you could ask Tariq is, what language do you speak? Because if black people were here first, I'm pretty sure we'd have our language. Because last time I checked, Native Americans still have their tribes and still have their language. They still speak Cherokee. They still speak Catawba. They still speak Yamasee. They still speak Lakota. They still speak Kawaki Oodle. They still speak Navajo. They still speak Powhatan. I can keep going on and on. And the fact that she did not bring that up was a huge problem. Then Tariq said in the very end, said, oh, we need our own education system, our own economic base. So what you want is proto-nationalism. That's essentially what you're advocating for. You're advocating proto-nationalism, nation within a nation. You are not advocating anything that's economic empowerment. You're telling black people we need, military infrastructure. What? And he's talking about, well, with these white militias and stuff, that's policy. He says, no, it doesn't happen in the policy realm. That's what a government is meant for. That's how you get change, is through policy. Black people didn't end up where they were because the government was sweet and it cared. No, it was through policy. It was through redlining. It was through the constitutional amendment, the 3/5 clause. And the fact that she didn't bring this up was a problem. And that's what I mean. She didn't go, she was not a hardcore real Pan-Africanist. Because I could have debunked and destroyed all of those arguments in the comment section, all those comments talking about back to Africa. I could debunk that with the snap of my finger. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Baruti, they really do believe that. And my thing about it is Cherokees don't recognize it. They've kicked numerous black Cherokee people out that they had to sue for them. So I don't understand where these talking points are coming from, this ego, this black Indian advocate, which makes absolutely no sense. Also, right, it's funny because Native Americans were referred to as the red race. They weren't referred to as the black race. So how can black people be Native American if Native Americans are referred to as the red race, which is why it's offensive. It's the reason why the word redskin is offensive. It makes a mockery of Native Americans. And Native Americans don't call themselves black. I don't understand what this person is like, what he's saying. That's what we've allowed too much nonsense in the black community to fester. Too much nonsense. I'm over it. I'm over that nonsense. Like, oh, we are Moors. No, you're not. You're not from North Africa. Shut up. You're not from North Africa. We're from West and Central Africa. Mm-hmm. That usually happens. That usually happens. It usually steers in a completely different direction. One that makes absolutely no sense. Makes no sense. And that's what hurts our nation of chances. That's what hurts it. People who don't come and check them. People who just say, well, it's a difference of an opinion. No, it ain't. Mine is factually true. His ain't. And that's what it is. Period.
My apologies. I went off the live for a minute. I don't know what happened, but I'm back on. Yeah, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I'll just say that to say the least. Any other questions? Any other what we need to do? Who we need to get on our side? Let me know. Any questions? I'm all up for it. It's 30 minutes. This was relatively short. I wanted to get to the fundamentals. I didn't just want to ramble on. If there's any other questions you would like to ask me, let me know. No, African American isn't an ethnicity. African American is not a nation. It's not a African Americans are an ethnic group, but they're not a nation. I never said they weren't an ethnicity. We are an ethnicity. We're not a nation, but we are an ethnicity. But yeah, these internet pretend. I call them internet pretendians. We need to call them what that is. We need to start calling them internet pretendians. Internet pretendians are a hindrance to the black community. That's what we need to call them. I'm trying to build and develop, and they playing games, and they here to bull job, and I'm not here to bull job. Right. If there are any other questions, I'm really about. That's all I have to say. We need to understand what a nation is, what it means to be developed, have all of our needs met, so that we can be, respected on the global stage, to be respected militarily, economically, academically, scientifically. I want us to be respected. And I was reading. The one last thing I'll say to y'all is I read this, interesting thing on Quora. Just so happened to be on Quora, and I saw this, question, and one of the questions they asked was why is Liberia poor even though it got dependent under 70 years ago? And one of the arguments that they made, and I actually it was a good argument. He said was to be industrialized, to be sure, industrialization is hard, and especially so in the days of European imperialism. During that era, only a few countries pulled it off in time to resist foreign domination. Not even every European country could pull it off. But in Liberia's case, the American-Liberian elite wasn't interested in improving Liberia for a few reasons. One, industrialization requires free labor or cheap labor. But they relied on farming. They ran large plantations. They got off of cash crops. Industrialization requires you to change the social position, as the labor would be redirected to factories and not so much on farms. Secondly, industrialization requires capital. And since Liberia relied on cash crops and we had to import industrial and manufactured goods, this led to a lot of debt. So essentially, we could never build up the capital that was necessary. And lastly, industrialization requires markets. And it wasn't large or wealthy enough to absorb goods into a large scale. And it basically talks about how two ways to do it was either to allow full citizenship, equal rights for Native Liberians, or to allow and encourage massive African American immigration. But of course, African Americans were not able to go because we didn't have the necessary resources or funds. So that eliminated that part. And so had more African Americans have been able to immigrate, Liberia could have been an industrialized nation. So, that's what we really need to be looking at, is how were we prohibited from being industrialized, from being a developed country? And how do we become developed? And we need to focus on that. Yeah, like Baruti, that's really what the problem is it's a name, like it's not an original name. It's not like the Gullas or the Muskogos or the Semanas or the Medicans or the the Creole people or the Aku. Like it's not a unique name. It's just a basic putting together word name, FBA and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a problem. It's a huge problem. Yeah, and we do need to fix that. But I'm not gonna be on here for far too long. I know this is only 35 minutes. Going once, going twice for the questions. All right, y'all. Well, if there are not any more questions, I'm planning to end the live. Oh, okay, hold on. There is one last. What people and groups do you believe should be challenging Tariq or ADOS regarding ideologies? The BAO, and other people who have been on the continent, who have thrived on the continent. You need to be talking. We don't need these token heads talking. I'm tired of people they don't know anything about the Back to Africa movement, don't understand what Africans have done for us, and they're speaking for us. They can be supportive of us, but we need to be in the front of the line challenging people because we know what we're talking about. We have the experience. We have the expertise. It's time for us to take the mantle, and it's time for us to be head up and head front. So that answers Baruti's question. Thank you guys so much for being on this live. I hope that you guys got a lot of I mean, are you signed up to the website? Because if you're signed up to the website, Baruti, you can just we can answer your questions if you've signed up to the website. We and stuff like that. We can answer your questions. By the way, make sure you sign up to the website at bilafricstan.org/login/register. Please sign up to the website. We'd really appreciate you guys signing up to the website. So that's all I have to say for today. Remember, land, infrastructure, nationhood, and remember, what is nationhood? Developing the right mindset. What does it entail? And I hope this information